Hey friends, happy fifth day of VBS. Thank you for going on this journey with us. We have had a lot of fun putting all these videos together and having our live gatherings. Sorry, this one had to be a recording, but you can just use this one on your own time with your family. Take your time with it. So thank you so much for learning about compassion with me and with all of your friends from church. Today, I want to talk a little bit about feeling overwhelmed. You might have heard that term before. Right now, I'm feeling overwhelmed with joy that we were able to have Vacation Bible School together. There's just so many positive feeling kind of all rolled into one, and it's kind of overwhelming. Now, there's also overwhelming in a bad way, being overwhelmed with all the fun we're having at VBS, that's a good overwhelming. But sometimes a lot of things can feel like they're piling up that are bad, and that's a different kind of overwhelming. I can feel overwhelmed when I get too many negative thoughts, or when I have just so much to do and I feel like I can't do it all. When a job feels too big, when I make too many mistakes in a row, I can feel overwhelmed. Maybe you can too. Now, when I get overwhelmed with all these negative thoughts, I kind of want to just go back and start over, have a do-over, right? Go back and just have a fresh start and have the chance to try and make everything right. Have you ever had the opportunity to start over on a project? Maybe it was like a school project and you were able to start all over again. Or have you ever wanted to take a break and rest before trying something that seemed a little overwhelming? What are some times that you have wanted to have a fresh start? Well, fresh starts are great, right? When we have a fresh start, we're able to be hopeful about the next step. Imagine how great it feels when you clean up your room, right? You can see where everything belongs. You can play and spread out on this empty floor. An empty floor can feel peaceful. You feel like you accomplished something by cleaning up your room. Well, sometimes I feel overwhelmed when something is not fair or right or just. Okay? So when something's not right, it's called injustice, and injustice can feel overwhelming. Imagine a rule in your classroom that favored some of your friends but didn't help you succeed. How would you feel if your teacher changed the rules so that you could all succeed? Well, you'd feel relieved, hopefully. Right? That would be an act of justice, taking an injustice and making it right. Now, when people do not have what they need, or when they're treated badly, I feel frustration and sadness. And in those times, I pray for justice, for the injustice to be made right. So we have a song and a story and a prayer and some movement to help us understand what it means to ask God to help us in this pursuit of justice. May we be filled with compassion. May we be filled up to the top of our hearts when we have the power to make something right. May we show God's love. May we be shown compassion. May we be found in the center of peace when we have needs that others can meet. May we find God's love. May we be filled with compassion. May we be filled up to the top of our hearts when we have the power to make something right. May we show God's love. Well, great job singing. Before Pastor Mark tells us our story for today, I would like to offer our compassion prayer. So put your hand on your heart and another hand on your head. And you don't have to repeat after me. I'm just going to pray this for you. You'll have a chance to pray it at the end too. Let's pray. Joyful Spirit, your loving hands are always creating freedom, release, and fresh starts. Help us do the same today by caring for all living things with gentleness and care. Open us to humbly receive that same care ourselves. Make our hearts smile and our actions sing with your promise of abundance toward the whole world. Amen. Thank you for praying. Here is our story.
Hey guys, it's Pastor Mark. I'm glad to get to tell you some of the story today. I'm glad Pastor Aaron asked me to do this part of what you're up to for your last Vacation Bible School class. And so here's the deal. This is part of the story of God's people from way back in the Old Testament, a long time before Jesus showed up. But back then, the people of Israel, God's chosen ones, we call them, right? They journeyed for a really long time through a vast wilderness for 40 years or so. Vast wilderness means they couldn't see the end of it. Like when you look out at the ocean and you can't see anything but the skyline, or when you look out at a desert like that and you can't see anything but sand, or a wilderness like a deep, dark, dense forest where you can't see anything but trees, right? So they wandered around in the wilderness for 40 years, a really long time. Finally, they got to Mount Sinai, and there they rested, and God gave them instructions through Moses, their leader, the one who led them out of slavery in Egypt. He gave them instructions for their life together in this new land, this promised land where they had finally landed. In this land, God said, we will practice Sabbath together. And this will happen not only, God said, on the seventh day, but on the seventh year. So for 6 years, God said, we're going to do our regular work. We're going to plant seeds. We're going to grow, and we're going to prune, and we're going to harvest the fruits of our labor. But in the seventh year, we'll let the land rest. Even the land needs peace and quiet, God said, just like people do. Everyone is going to be able to harvest and eat whatever the land gives us in that seventh year. Then God said, in the 50th year, 50 years later, we're going to celebrate Jubilee together. Jubilee sounds like a party, right? Maybe you've heard it used that way. This Jubilee is going to be like the Sabbath every 7 years. Well, we'll let the land rest. It's going to be a fresh start for the whole community, this Jubilee 50 years later. The land and the people and everyone is going to get to go to their homes and to be together in joy. That sounds like a party too, right? It's a holy time, and we will be fed and we will be nourished by whatever the land gives us through our work. In this time, we're going to respond with justice, God said, by giving fresh starts to everybody. This means we're going to be fair and we're going to be honest with one another. We're going to take care of those who are sick. We're going to take care of those who are alone. We're going to take care of those who are in need of help in some way. And God said we're going to welcome people who are from all different countries and different nations into our family. And they're going to be like family for us in a way that they never had been before. We will work for people's freedom during that time, God said. We'll work together to help everybody rest and rejoice in God's abundance. And God said, I'll bless the land during this year so you don't have to work the land. And I promise we will be fed and nourished by the land's gifts. Those are some pretty big promises, maybe some new words for you: Sabbath, abundance, jubilee, and justice. So what do you imagine when you hear some of those words? What do you think about when you hear the word justice? Sometimes we think about courthouses or police officers. Do you imagine or do you think about what happens when someone gets hurt or when someone hurts you and then they're punished for it? Sometimes that's what we think about when we think about the word justice, jails and courts. Maybe you imagine justice to be like equal treatment. I think that's kind of what God had in mind when God talked about justice. Everyone gets the same amount of food, or everybody gets the same kind of treats, or everyone gets the same number of gifts at Christmas or for their birthday. Often, God's ideas, though, are very different from ours. God's idea of justice looks more like all the ways we've talked about over the course of your VBS time together these last couple of weeks. God's idea of justice looks like compassion, seeing and welcoming, or being brave and honest, or loving ourselves, and of course, loving each other. All those things are what God means when God says justice, being present with each other. It means we see God's abundance. There's that other big word. What does abundance mean for you? Abundance means there's enough for everyone. That's hard for us to believe sometimes because we always want more, don't we, for ourselves? But it means we can welcome everybody to our table. We can welcome everybody into our family. We can welcome everybody into our church. That's what abundance means. Abundance means we can be brave and we can trust each other because God's promised us there will always be enough for us. We can be honest with our hearts. We can give and we can receive care and compassion. We don't have to worry about running out of care and compassion because God's care and compassion for us means there's enough to go around for everybody. That's what abundance means. And abundance means we can do the work with God to care for all of creation, not just ourselves, not just our family, not just our neck of the woods, but when God tells us that there will always be enough, that the land will always provide, that God will always provide, it changes the way we get to do and to be God's people in the world because we can be compassionate without limit. We can be gracious without limit. We can be loving without limit because when we remember that God loves us with abundance, we can love each other with abundance. We can be compassionate with abundance. We can be caring with abundance. We will never be able to outgive God by loving one another. So think about those words: abundance, jubilee, justice, and thanks for learning ways to practice those things through your time together at all this VBS. And thanks for letting me tell the story about the Hebrews wandering around in the wilderness and taking their own Sabbath, offering justice to one another and jubilee and sharing the abundance of God, not just with themselves, but with the world around them. See you soon.
Okay, friends. Well, next we have our image. This is the fifth one. So the last one, color that in, cut it out, and you can hang it up with the other ones. As you're coloring it, pay attention to these questions. You can talk about those with your family. Also, we have more coloring to do. You should have your poster hung up somewhere, and that should almost be about done. If it's not, don't worry about it. You have a few more weeks of summer left, and we have some hot days coming up, so that'd be a good activity to do when it's super hot, right? Another activity I would like you to do is this Jubilee Puzzle. Remember that the year of Jubilee helped the people of Israel rest and prepare for the future and to make things right. So you're going to use this puzzle as a template to draw and color in a scene of something that is right, something that is working as it should. You know, in our world right now, it can seem like a lot isn't working right. I mean, we weren't even able to go to school for a long time. So maybe you could draw a picture of your school, you can turn it either way you want, with a bunch of kids playing and having fun. You could draw a picture of church, maybe, since we haven't been to church in a long time, and just color that in. This COVID disease is not the only thing that's wrong with our world right now. We really need a fresh start with the problems of racism, right? So maybe you could draw a picture of a bunch of people with different skin, different clothes, anything that we judge other people, and just show them all peacefully loving each other and caring for one another and living in the world the way that God wanted it, with all of our diversity, all of our differences, but still caring for one another. So draw any picture like that that you would like, and then you cut out the little puzzle pieces, and then you can take it apart and put it together. And when it's apart, really look at those pieces and how they're not quite fitting together, how the picture doesn't seem to make any sense, and you can think about how that feels and how you need compassion when the world doesn't seem like it's fitting together. But through compassion, through God's gifts, including compassion and patience and kindness and goodness and faithfulness, then we can start putting the pieces together and making the world back into the way it was always supposed to be. So, really cool exercise. I hope you have fun with this. As always, have your parents take pictures of those puzzles, send them to me so I can share them with you, because you're doing some really cool stuff. Well, if you want to take a break from coloring and cutting out and all that stuff, I think it's time to move around. So go ahead and find a comfortable space, and Lindsay's going to teach us another movement exercise.
Hi everyone, welcome back for our last session of yoga today. Let's bring our hands to heart center, and we'll start by saying our special word, Namaste. The light in me sees and bows to the light in you. Let's put one hand on our belly and one hand on our heart to start with our breathing. We'll sit up nice and tall, and as we breathe in, we think, I am a part. As we breathe out, of God's balance and fresh starts. Breathe in, I am a part. Breathe out, of God's balance and fresh starts. One more time, breathe in, I am a part. Breathe out, of God's balance and fresh starts. Let's stand up onto our feet. And we're going to come to the top of our mat. So I'm going to turn so that you can see me and Kyle. And we're going to stand in mountain pose. And we'll say, in mountain pose, we feel our strength. We are unshakable. We'll take a big breath in. And as we blow out, we'll fold forward, touching our hands down to the floor. We look up. We prepare and focus our eyes forward. Take a breath. And as you blow out, put your hands down and step back to plank pose. Both legs are straight and our body's like a board. And then as we lower down, we'll come all the way down to the mat, uncurl our toes, and then push up into upward facing dog. We face the sun and welcome with courage what this day holds for us. Tuck your toes and step back to downward dog. Lift those hips high. You can even bend one knee and then the other, pedaling out your feet. Nice job. And as we inhale, we'll lift our right leg high. And as we exhale, we'll bring it towards our belly and then step our right foot in between our hands. And seal our left foot down flat. And we'll take a big inhale breath, rising up for warrior one, facing the front of your mat. Then we'll open our arms up to the sides, finding warrior two. So our right leg is bent, left leg is nice and straight. In warrior two, we open our arms to make room for everyone and everything. We stretch to see what is beyond us. Now we'll move our hands down, framing that right foot. Roll onto your left toes and then step your right foot back to meet your left, coming back to our downward dog. Let's take a minute to bend our knees. Maybe wiggle our tail out a little bit. And then knees are straight. And we'll lift our left leg up behind us. Take a big breath in. As you blow it out, bring your left leg to your belly and step it through to your hands. Seal down your right foot. We'll take a big inhale, rise up, arms up overhead for warrior one. And then as we exhale, we'll make our arms go out to the sides, Turn our body to face the side of our mat for Warrior Two. In Warrior Two, we open our arms to make room for everyone and everything. We stretch to see what is beyond us. And then we'll windmill our hands down to frame our left foot, step our left foot back to mirror right, downward dog. One more time. Take a big breath in and blow it out. And then step your feet forward, forward fold, and rise up, coming back to our mountain pose. Kyle and I are gonna turn so that you can see us now because we're gonna move into tree pose. So as we stand strong, we then begin to lift our right foot, just like Kyle's doing, finding your tree pose. Take a big breath in and blow it out. And then put your right foot down and we'll stand up nice and tall again in our mountain pose. And switch feet. Tree pose teaches us to be patient, steady, and balanced. A tree lives in rhythm with the world and its cycles. It nourishes all living things. And then put your left foot down. And we stand in our mountain pose with our hands at our heart center for our final closing namaste. So let's all say it together. Namaste.
Namaste.
Thank you guys so much for practicing yoga. It was fun to practice it with you this week or over the last few weeks. And I hope you enjoyed doing yoga as a part of VBS.
Great job moving around. Movement is a great way to practice Jubilee, right? It's restful in its own way. It restores your body and it prepares you for the future. It gives you energy. So very important that you're getting a lot of exercise and moving around and stretching. So we're going on to our compassion in action activity. And this is something you're just going to do on your own after you talk with your parents about it. But I hope you understand there are so many ways to show compassion. We begin by seeing and welcoming. We need to be brave and trust God. It also means caring for and loving ourselves so that we can trust God's voice in us. And all of this helps us be present with each other along the way as we follow God's lead. And when we cultivate all these different seeds of compassion, we become open to seeing the wideness and the goodness of God's creation. We show compassion to the earth as a way of rejoicing in God's abundance. There is enough for everyone. That is what it means for God to be a God of abundance. So our compassion in action activity will help us remember and connect to the provision of land that was promised to the people of Israel from God. You know, there is no limit to the ways that you can show compassion to yourself and to the earth and grow in your understanding that God is a God of abundance. Well, our vacation Bible school time is coming to a close. We have our closing prayer coming up with Chelsea and Kinch, which is so cool that they were able to record that for us. I just wanted to again thank you for going on this journey with us. I know we had people from all over the United States tuning into these and participating, which was fantastic. I hope that you have learned as much about compassion as I have. I know I've learned a lot from you. I've really enjoyed hanging out on our live gatherings and seeing what you've been creating. We have learned, let's just review here, we've learned that compassion begins with seeing, feeling, and welcoming. We talked about how compassion helps us be brave and how it's important to love and care for ourselves. We learned last time how it helps us be open to people we encounter along the way and to trust that God is leading us. So today, for our last time together, we explored how compassion gives us fresh starts through the beautiful tradition of Jubilee. Jubilee, or fresh starts, helps us see, feel, and trust God's abundance Abundance meaning there is enough for everyone. God's abundance is meant for all people and all creation. And when we make space for rest, when we gather together at the table, when we care for those who need the most help, when we make space for rest, gather at the table and care for those who need the most help, we're showing God's compassion. So think about these questions, talk about them with your parents. Why are fresh starts so important? Why do you think it's important to rest? What does a good celebration look like? How does celebrating help us share God's compassion? All right. Well, God's compassion is God's justice, and working for God's justice, making things right, releases God's abundance into the world, making sure everyone has what they need. When we rest and help people in the land to rest, we are showing God's justice. When we gather together at the table in joy, we show God's justice. When we care for those who need the most help, we show God's justice. Justice is making things right, and it happens when we are compassionate. So, and these are the ways that we show compassion. We see and welcome. We're brave and show up. We love ourselves. We're present with each other. And we enjoy fresh starts. When we do these things, we are showing God's love, peace, and justice to the whole world. So let's close with our closing prayer.
God's compassion is God's justice, and working for God's justice, making things right, releases God's abundance into the world, making sure everyone has what they need. When we rest and help people in the land to rest, we show God's justice. When we gather together at the table in joy, we show God's justice. When we care for those who need the most help, we show God's justice. Justice, making things right, is what happens when we are compassionate. These are ways that we show compassion. Seeing and welcoming, being brave and showing up, loving ourselves, being present with each other, and fresh starts. And when we do these things, we show God's love, peace, and justice with the world. Let's end with our compassion prayer. Place one hand on your head and one hand on your heart. We are doing this because compassion happens in our brains, but we feel it in our hearts. Choose a family member to lead the prayer and repeat after me. Joyful Spirit, your loving hands are always creating freedom, release, and fresh starts. Help us to do the same today by caring for all living things with gentleness and care. Open us to humbly receive that same care ourselves. Make our hearts smile and our actions sing. With your promise of abundance towards the whole world. Amen.
All right, that is Vacation Bible School 2020 virtual edition. I know it wasn't the same as all being together in person, but I really think this was a neat program. A lot of good activities. It's fun to color, right? But also all those compassion and action activities that you can do. If you feel like you missed anything, you have the curriculum, your parents have it, so you can go back and revisit anything. And you have these videos too to go back and sing your favorite songs again, relive some of those fun stories. But I just want to thank you again for being so awesome and participating in Vacation Bible School. God bless you.